The garage door was wide open. That was the first thing I saw as I stood in my kitchen, holding a cup of coffee gone cold. My name is Helen Matthews. 8 months ago, my husband Richard passed away. And since then, the house has been too quiet. But that morning, silence wasn't the problem. Emptiness was. Through the window, I saw the sunlight spilling into the garage, landing on the dark oil stain where Richard's 1968 Mustang should have been. The car he'd rebuilt piece by piece for 20 years. Gone. I set the cup down and walked outside, the spring air sharp and clean. Everything inside the garage was untouched. His tools hung in perfect order, his red toolbox on the bench. The smell of leather and oil still strong. Only the car was missing. I was still standing there when a black beam pulled into the driveway. My son Evan stepped out, hands in his pockets, eyes down. His wife Sophia followed, impeccable as always, sunglasses hiding everything but confidence. Evan looked nervous. "Mom, I need to tell you something." I crossed my arms. "Where's the car, Evan?" He hesitated. "I sold it." The words barely registered. "You what?" "It's been sitting there for months. Sophia's planning a business trip to Paris. We needed the money. I got $15,000 for it. That's fair, right?" For a moment, the world tilted. $15,000 for 20 years of his father's work? For the dream we built together? I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just whispered, "That car wasn't yours to sell." Sophia spoke softly, her tone sweet but firm. "It's just a car, Helen. It was time to move on." I looked at her, at my son beside her, and felt something break quietly inside me. Richard's car was gone, but I knew somehow this wasn't over. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every corner of the house felt hollow without that car sitting in the garage. Around dawn, I sat at the kitchen table, flipping through Richard's old work journal. His handwriting was so neat, so deliberate, almost finished. One line read, "Can't wait to teach Helen to drive her." I pressed my hand over the page, fighting the ache in my chest. The phone rang at 7 a.m. I almost ignored it. The number was unfamiliar. "Mrs. Matthews?" a man's voice asked, deep and rough. "My name's Tom Garner. I own Garner Classic Auto. I believe I have your husband's Mustang." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "You what?" "Your son sold it to me yesterday, said he needed the money fast. I paid him what he asked. But, ma'am, that car is worth much more than $15,000, closer to $200,000. I recognized it right away. Richard used to bring it to shows. He spoke about it like it was part of your family." My throat tightened. "You knew my husband?" "I did," Tom said softly. 25 years ago, he helped me when no one else would. He co-signed a loan that saved my business. I owed him more than I could repay. When your son showed up with that Mustang, I knew Richard would want me to call you." I sat very still. "Why now? Why call me?" Tom hesitated. "Because your husband made me promise. He said if anything ever happened to him and that car ended up here, I should contact you right away. There's something inside it, something he wanted you to find." The world seemed to fade for a moment. My hands trembled. "Something inside the car?" "Yes, ma'am, a hidden compartment. He said it was only for you." I stared out the window at the empty garage. "I'll be there within the hour." Garner Classic Auto sat on the edge of town, surrounded by warehouses and a row of gleaming old cars. When I pulled up, Tom was already waiting outside. A tall man in his 60s, gray hair, work shirt, steady eyes. He smiled gently. "Mrs. Matthews, thank you for coming." Inside the garage, the world seemed to stop. The Mustang stood there, polished and perfect, its burgundy paint glinting under the bright lights. I took a slow breath.
For a second, I could almost hear Richard's radio playing soft rock. Smell the soap he used to clean his hands. He built this with his heart, I whispered. Tom nodded. He sure did, and he left something for you. He leaned into the car, pressed a small point beneath the dashboard, and a faint click echoed. A hidden panel slid open. Inside was a sealed envelope with my name written in Richard's familiar handwriting and a tiny brass key taped to it. My fingers trembled as I opened it. The first line read, "Helen, if you're reading this, I'm gone." I stopped breathing. The letter continued, his voice alive through every stroke. "I've been investigating Sophia for over a year. Her real name isn't Sophia Bennett. It's Sophia Chandler. She's done this before, twice that I can confirm. She targets men with aging parents, manipulates them, and vanishes once the assets are sold. Evan won't see it till it's too late. Protect him." I pressed my hand to my mouth. Tears burned my eyes as I kept reading. "This key is for our safe deposit box number 512 at First National Bank. Inside, you'll find documents and stocks. You'll be okay financially, but more than that, you'll have proof of who she really is. Tom knows what to do. Trust him. Protect yourself and protect our son." The letter ended with a single line. "I love you, Helen. I'm still looking after you." When I looked up, Tom's eyes were wet. "He really loved you," he said quietly. I nodded, gripping the key. "And he's still protecting us."
The next morning, I drove straight to First National Bank. The manager led me into the vault, where I unlocked box 512 with the small brass key. Inside was an envelope labeled "For Helen." I opened it carefully and found several stock certificates and another handwritten note from Richard. "Helen," it read, "I invested $5,000 for a patient's son years ago. The company went public recently. These shares are worth far more now. You'll never have to worry. But please use this not for comfort. Use it for protection." I asked the bank clerk to check their value. When she looked up, her eyes widened. "Mrs. Matthews, these are worth over $300,000. My heart pounded. Richard hadn't just protected me emotionally. He'd built a lifeline for my future. After leaving the bank, I met Tom again. He told me Richard had also worked with a private investigator named Peter Coleman, a retired detective who specialized in fraud. Tom made the call, and within an hour, Peter and I met at a small cafe near the hospital where I'd worked for decades. Peter brought a thin folder and spoke quietly. "Your husband was right to be suspicious. Sophia's real name is indeed Sophia Chandler. She's been married twice before. Both men ended up bankrupt. One in Arizona, one in Florida. Their parents lost home, savings, everything." He slid photographs and copies of marriage records across the table. "Her pattern never changes. She finds a man with an aging parent, builds trust, creates concern about their health, then convinces him to sell property. Once the money clears, she disappears." I stared at the papers, cold spreading through my chest. Richard had known. He'd been trying to stop her. And now that responsibility had passed to me. For the first time in months, I didn't feel powerless. I felt ready. Evan and Sophia returned from Karis a week later. I greeted them with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes and invited them to dinner. Peter's advice echoed in my mind. Let her reveal herself. She always does. I made pot roast, Richard's favorite. The table looked exactly as it always had, but everything felt different. Sophia's laughter was smooth, practiced. Paris was divine, she said. It reminded me how short life is. You should think about traveling, Helen. Maybe someday, I said evenly. She glanced around the dining room, her eyes landing on the old family photos. This house must be hard to manage all by yourself. 2 stories, a big yard. You could sell it. Find something small or something easier. Evan nodded almost unconsciously. We just worry about you, Mom. The stairs, the lawn work. There it was. The first seed. I forced a smile. I appreciate that, but I'm fine here. Sophia's tone softened, but her eyes stayed sharp. You know, my aunt waited too long before downsizing. She fell one day and it was awful. I'd hate for that to happen to you. I stirred my coffee. I take care of myself. Always have. The conversation drifted, but the message had been planted. After dinner, Sophia excused herself to use the bathroom. 10 minutes passed, then 15. I went to look for her and found her upstairs near Richard's old office. The bathroom was downstairs. When she saw me, she smiled quickly. Oh, I got turned around. This house is a maze. The bathroom's right where it's always been, I said, calm but cold.
She laughed, touched my arm. Of course, silly me. I walked her downstairs without another word. That night, after they left, I opened my notebook and wrote down every detail, the questions, the timing, the look in her eyes. Richard had kept notes when he worked. Now, so would I. By midweek, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. Sophia had begun her quiet manipulation, and Evan was already echoing her words. It was time to show him the truth. I called and asked him to come over alone. He hesitated, saying he'd need to tell Sophia, but I said gently, "It's about your father. Please, Evan." After a pause, he agreed. He arrived that afternoon looking guarded. I had coffee ready and Richard's folder laid neatly on the kitchen table. "Mom, if this is about the car again," "It's not," I said. "This is about your father's last months." He frowned but sat down. I slid the letter toward him. "Before you say anything, just read." He scanned Richard's handwriting, his jaw tightening with every line. "Dad never liked Sophia," he said finally. "You're both overreacting." I didn't argue. I simply opened the folder and spread out the photographs. 2 wedding portraits, 2 different men, 1 familiar woman. Beneath them were copies of marriage certificates. Sophia Chandler Wilson, 2018. Sophia Chandler Lang, 2021. Articles followed. Stories about fraud, property sales, families left with nothing. Evan's voice dropped to a whisper. This could be anyone. "Call them," I said quietly, handing him a paper with 2 phone numbers written in Richard's neat handwriting. "Ask them who their wives were." He pushed the paper away. "You just can't stand her." My throat tightened. "Your father spent the last year trying to protect you. Please don't let that be for nothing." He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I can't listen to this." He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I sat there in the stillness, the paper spread across the table, my hands trembling. I didn't know if I'd lost my son or just handed him the only chance to save himself. That night passed in silence. I sat awake in the living room, the folder still on the table. Around midnight, the phone rang. It was Evan. His voice was hoarse. "Mom, you were right. I called them, both of them. Everything Dad wrote was true." My breath caught. What did they say? He hesitated. Same story. Same woman. She made them sell their parents' homes, took the money, and vanished. I confronted Sophia. She didn't even try to deny it, just packed her bags and left. She's gone. I called Peter Coleman right away. She's running, he said. We've been tracking her accounts. She made several cash withdrawals, about $12,000 total, and booked a one-way ticket to Mexico City.
She's at the airport Marriott right now. What do we do? I asked. We stop her before she boards. The detectives in Arizona and Florida have warrants ready. I'll meet you at your house. Bring Evan. At 3 a.m., Peter's car pulled into my driveway. Evan looked pale, hollow, but determined. We drove in silence through the sleeping city. By the time we reached the airport, dawn was just breaking. Peter pointed toward the security line. 2 plainclothed detectives stood nearby. She'll come through there. At 5:30, Sophia appeared. Heels clicking, designer coat perfectly pressed, 2 large suitcases behind her. For a moment, Evan froze. Then the detective stepped forward. "Ma'am, we need to speak with you," one said. Sophia smiled faintly. "Is there a problem, officers?" "Yes," the detective said evenly. "Linda Marsh, you're under arrest." Her expression twisted. "You've got the wrong person. My name is—" But before she could finish, she bolted. Airport security tackled her within seconds. Her screams echoed through the terminal. "You ruined everything," she shouted when she saw us standing there. Evan flinched, but I didn't move. Justice had finally caught up to her, and Richard's plan was complete. 2 weeks later, Sophia, whose real name was Linda Marsh, pleaded guilty. The prosecutors linked her to 5 separate fraud cases across 3 states. She accepted a 12-year federal sentence. The headlines came and went, but for Evan and me, the real work began afterward. He showed up at my door one quiet afternoon, holding 2 suitcases. "Can I stay here for a while?" he asked softly. I opened the door without a word. His old room looked the same, trophies, posters, and the faded curtains I'd never replaced. For the first few days, he barely spoke. He'd eat dinner with me, then sit alone in the garage, staring at Richard's tools. One evening, I found him holding the work journal. His voice cracked as he read aloud. "Taught Evan to change the oil today. He's 12. His hands are small but careful." He looked up, tears in his eyes. "I don't deserve forgiveness." "You don't need to earn it," I said quietly. "Your father never blamed you." He shook his head. "I sold his car. I betrayed him." "You didn't betray him," I said, placing my hand on his shoulder. "You were deceived. There's a difference." A week later, Tom Garner arrived in the driveway. The Mustang was on a trailer, shining under the afternoon sun. "It's yours again," Tom said. "Richard built it for you both." Evan stood frozen, unable to speak. I felt tears rise as the car rolled back into the garage, the same spot it had always belonged. That evening, Evan turned to me. "Maybe I can fix it up again like he did." I smiled. "Then let's do it together." For the first time in months, the air in the house felt lighter, like Richard had never really left at all. Summer came early that year. The days grew longer and the scent of oil and cut grass filled the air again. Every weekend, Evan and I spent hours in the garage, him with Richard's journal open, me handing him tools, just like I used to hand his father. Little by little, the Mustang came back to life. One Sunday morning, Evan wiped his hands and smiled. "She's ready." The car gleamed in the sunlight, deep burgundy, perfect again. He looked at me. "You should drive first, Mom. Dad built it for you." My heart pounded as I sat in the driver's seat. The leather was cool, the steering wheel smooth and familiar. When I turned the key, the engine rumbled to life, low and steady, like Richard's heartbeat echoing through time. Evan climbed in beside me. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded and eased the car out of the garage. The wind rushed through the windows as we rolled down Maple Avenue. We passed the park where Evan used to play, the hospital where I'd worked, and the church where Richard and I had been married. It felt like driving through a lifetime. All of the places that built us, all the memories that still lived quietly inside me. Evan laughed for the first time in months. He'd lose his mind if he saw us now. I smiled through tears. He already sees us. When we pulled back into the driveway, I parked the Mustang right where it had always belonged. The faint oil stain beneath it looked almost like a shadow of the past. Evan reached over, squeezed my hand. "Dad would be proud of us," I said softly. That night, as the garage light glowed against the dark, I realized something. Richard's revenge hadn't been about anger or punishment. It was about truth, protection, and love that outlasted even death. Life slowly found its rhythm again. The house no longer echoed with loss. It hummed with small sounds of living. Evan started working part-time at Tom Garner's shop, learning how to restore cars the way his father once had. He said fixing something broken made him feel closer to Richard. I understood exactly what he meant. Some evenings I'd watch from the porch as Evan pulled the Mustang into the driveway. The same car that once symbolized betrayal now stood for everything we'd reclaimed: trust, forgiveness, and resilience. One afternoon, he handed me an envelope. Inside was a short note. I sold my watch, the one she gave me. I donated the money to a shelter for victims of financial abuse. Dad would have liked that. My eyes filled with tears. He was healing, step by step. That evening, we sat in the garage. The door opened to the sunset. Evan turned to me. "Do you think Dad knew this would happen?" I smiled. "Your father didn't just build a car, Evan. He built a way back home." Evan nodded slowly. "I keep thinking about how easily I believed her. She made me doubt everything, even you." "She was good at deception," I said softly. "But your father was better at love." The light faded, leaving the car gleaming faintly in the twilight. We sat in silence, letting the moment speak for itself. Richard's foresight had protected us, but it was love, quiet, steady love, that truly saved us. Before going inside, I looked back at the Mustang, its hood catching the last light of day. "Thank you, Richard," I whispered. "You can rest now." Because real revenge isn't loud or cruel. It's truth that endures, and love that refuses to be broken. Autumn arrived softly that year. The trees on Maple Avenue turned shades of copper and gold, the same color as the Mustang when the evening sun hit its hood. I woke each morning to the sound of Evan starting the engine, that deep, familiar hum that somehow made the house feel alive again. He was thriving, working full-time with Tom, learning everything about restoration, rebuilding what others had given up on. "Every car has a story," he told me one evening. "Some are about love, some about loss, but they all deserve a second chance." I smiled. So do people. One Saturday, he convinced me to take another drive. We followed the back roads Richard always wanted to explore. The sky was clear, the world quiet. As we drove, the radio played one of Richard's favorite songs, and for a moment,
It felt like he was there with us, his hand resting over mine, his voice in the wind. We stopped at an overlook where the valley spread out below us, golden with afternoon light. Evan turned to me. "You know, Mom, I think Dad's plan worked. He didn't just save me. He brought us back together." I looked at him and smiled through tears. That was always his greatest talent. He fixed what others thought couldn't be fixed. Before we left, Evan slipped a small photograph behind the sun visor. A picture of Richard standing beside the half-finished Mustang, pride in his eyes. "He should always ride with us," he said. When we returned home, I parked the car and let the silence settle. It wasn't empty anymore. It was full of memory, of love, of peace. If you've ever been saved by someone's love, even after they're gone, share this story. Like, comment, and tell me where you're watching from. Because sometimes love itself is the greatest revenge of all.